Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk about our physiological drives and our need to satisfy hunger and our motivation to satisfy hunger. I put this cute little guinea pig video on here because we all need to eat. Eating is an essential part of life as well. And hunger, we know, is definitely a powerful motivator. Humans, animals, all living beings are driven to satisfy their need for food. But people definitely have different drives for food. Some people are really driven by food, really excited about food. There's a lot of people that are foodies and really enjoy the taste of food and different varieties of food. It's other people just don't care that much about food. So why is it that we do overeat? A lot of times it's not because we're hungry, it's because it tastes really good and we really like it, right? And then what about people who undereat? What about people that develop eating disorders like this poor anorexic woman here? How is it that happens? So in another video, we will talk about eating disorders. But this video, we're just going to talk about overeating and obesity. So we know that overweight and obesity is definitely increasing in our society. So this is the percentage of Americans who are overweight. This is not necessarily obesity, but people that are overweight. And in 1960, the vast majority of people were not overweight. And today, so about 45% of people were overweight in 1960. This is only in 2000. I wonder what it is in 2020. I should have looked that up. But 65% of Americans are overweight today. So pretty big problem. And why do you think this is? Why do you think people are more overweight now than they have ever been in the past? Well, there's a lot of different things a lot of different factors involved, right? Fast food might be one of them. Portion size has gotten much larger. The availability of food, we can get any variety of food that we want at any time, basically. We got, what do you call it, Uber Eats and DoorDash and all of those things. We don't have to get off of our couch to get the food, and that's probably not a good thing. There's a lot of processed food out there, crackers, Twinkies, lots of foods that are really not very good for us. There's lots of crazy new flavors of food. You go to the state fair, you can have a deep fried Twinkie. I don't know what else. There's probably a lot of other things. And then what about the cost of food? Are people who are wealthier, are they able to eat healthier? Is healthier food more expensive than unhealthy food? And the answer is probably yes to that question. You think about it, the dollar menu at McDonald's, fast food is much cheaper than going to the store and actually buying healthy foods. Healthy restaurants are often more expensive as well. So, people in poverty are sometimes at a disadvantage as far as eating healthy as well. So this is an example of how portion sizes have changed from 1950 to now. About triple the size of what we used to eat in 1950 is what we're eating now. So not necessarily a good thing. We also have kind of a sedentary lifestyle now. We spend a lot of time in front of the television watching Netflix. We spend our work days often in front of the computer, and we often eat lunch while we're doing that. We often have kind of mindless eating. We're not really paying attention to what we're eating. This picture down here at the bottom shows the different numbers of McDonald's around the world. And so all the countries in red have McDonald's in them. So we've sort of, corrupted the rest of the world here. These countries in blue, I think this is Greenland and Iceland, and this is, of course, Africa down here. I don't know these other countries here, but those are the only countries in the world that don't have McDonald's. The U.S. has the most McDonald's franchises at 13,000 and something, but Japan has 3,500, almost 3,600 McDonald's, which is kind of crazy because it's a pretty small country. So a lot of fast food certainly is contributing to people being overweight and obese. And it's not just here in the United States, it's all over the world. The United States is definitely up there. We have the largest population of obese people at 30 to 40%. But it's interesting here, this is Saudi Arabia, and you think that's a wealthy country, and it's surprising to me that they have a pretty big portion of adults that are actually obese as well. And if you look at the orange countries, it's a little difficult to tell the this orange from that orange. But Canada, some of the countries in South America, Great Britain is actually pretty dark orange. It's kind of close to us. Even Norway and Sweden, I would be surprised. There may be no data on some of these other countries with the gray color here, or maybe they don't have a problem. There's Greenland and Iceland, and these countries here don't have McDonald's as well. There might be a correlation there. And this is the obesity rate in 2014 by state. So California and Colorado and Hawaii even are, and there's Vermont up here, and I think that might be Massachusetts there, are among the healthiest states here, and we're kind of in the middle here. Texas barbecue, I guess maybe isn't good for us. Louisiana, Alabama, a lot of these states in red have much higher levels of obesity. So why is it that we overeat? Why is it that we have such a difficult relationship with food? Is food really addictive? And why do we call comfort foods anyway? It's because they're comforting, right? And so a lot of times when we're stressed or unhappy, we might eat and try to get some comfort from that food. And the problem with that is that comfort goes away really quickly, right? And then you feel bad because you ate the food, and this kind of a vicious, ugly cycle. And then what about how do we treat people that are overweight? Are we prejudiced against people who are overweight? And why is that? This is a TV show that was on, I don't know that it's on anymore, that really was trying to celebrate people's lives and try to share with the rest of us that people who are overweight are living life just like we are, and they're not. We should be less judgmental about it, a little bit more compassionate about it. And, we do tend to be pretty judgmental about people that are overweight. Would it make a difference if we could prove that, if we could find a gene that says, this person is obese because they have this particular gene? Is it just about willpower and exercise? I don't think so. Being obese or being overweight is not considered a psychological disorder. There were times in the past, in the 30s and 40s, where they did lock people up in insane asylums because they were obese, which is pretty scary. But it was fairly rare back then, and I think people just thought it was a strange aberration, and they thought they needed to be locked up in the insane asylum. So what are some of the causes of obesity and overeating? Well, we know emotional overeating is definitely a problem. We know that mindless eating in front of the TV is not a good idea. But we also know that when we don't get enough sleep, when we have stress, we often overeat to try to compensate for that. And those are all factors that cause overeating and can lead to being overweight and obese. There's something that you may not have heard about called the set point for weight that makes it really difficult for people to lose weight. I have a Biggest Loser video that I'm going to post for you after this video. Definitely watch it. It's a really interesting video, and it's about a study that was done by a psychologist who followed the Biggest Losers contestants after the show to see if they were able to keep that weight off. And what he found was that they were not able to keep the weight off. The majority of them put that weight back on. And part of the reason they put that weight back on is because that show, they've lost hundreds of pounds in like a 3-4 month period. And it never gave that chance for the brain to actually adjust to that change in size. It was losing weight much too quickly. Our body, I think we talked about this in chapter 7 on cognition. Our brain actually has a image of our body, where our arms are, where our feet are, our legs are, and actually how big our body is. Our brain actually has a picture of that in our brain. And if your body deviates from that, the brain still thinks that's the size that you should be. So if you gain 20 pounds and you keep it on for a year, your brain starts to believe that that's the weight that you're supposed to be. And when you go to try to lose that 20 pounds, your brain actually bites you. And the same thing when these Biggest Loser contestants went on the show, they lost 100 pounds. It was in such a short amount of time, the brain never got a chance to adjust it. So the brain still thinks that person needs to be 100 pounds heavier. and is signaling to that person that they're hungry, that they need to eat. So the set point for weight is one of the things that makes it really difficult for people to lose weight, and especially people who are obese and have kept that weight on for a long time. The best way to lose weight is slowly, so that your brain can actually adjust to that change in weight. If you do it really rapidly, your brain doesn't get a chance to adjust, and it just forces you to gain that weight back. So they had canceled that show, The Biggest Loser, because of this research study, because they said it's really not healthy for people to lose weight that rapidly, and it definitely isn't. And I don't know if they've changed the show and rebooted it. I thought they were, but I haven't seen it on. I wasn't a big watcher of this show, but it's a really interesting video, so definitely watch it. And we do know there is a genetic basis for obesity. We have not been able to identify specific genes yet that contribute to obesity, but we know that people that are obese and overweight often have parents that are overweight. We know from twin studies, if one twin is obese, it's really likely that that other twin is also obese. So we think that we know that the heritability of your body mass index is 65%. So there is a huge influence of genetics on obesity. This is the video I was talking about. So what part of our brain actually regulates hunger and eating activity? Well, our brain plays a really important role in regulating hunger. And the part of the brain that does that is the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus, actually, one side of the hypothalamus, the lateral hypothalamus, tells us that we're hungry, and the ventral medial hypothalamus, can't even get that out, tells us that we're full. So it regulates, the hypothalamus regulates other aspects of motivation as well, including things like emotion, hunger, thirst, and our sexual behavior. And one of the reasons we know about these two different sides of the hypothalamus and how their effect on hunger is because we've done studies with rats where we've gone in and destroyed their ventral medial hypothalamus, which is terrible. So we go in there and we destroy that, and so that destroys that sense of fullness for that mouse. And so that mouse never feels like it's full, never feels fully satisfied. So it just eats and eats and eats until it looks like this mouse here. And this poor mouse probably can't even walk, right? And it probably still feels hungry too. So we know that the hypothalamus plays a really important role in our hunger and our feelings of fullness as well. We also know that hormones are really involved in eating cues as well. So this hormone leptin is a protein, it's emitted by fat cells, and it actually helps to suppress hunger. If only we could make a medication that would help suppress hunger, we'd be doing pretty well. This ghrelin is a hormone that's released when we actually are hungry, and it sends a message to our brain that we're hungry. The insulin is actually a hormone as well that controls the levels of glucose in our bloodstream. And when the glucose levels are low, it does send a message to the brain that we need to eat something. Orexin is another hormone that's produced in the hypothalamus, and it stimulates increased eating. So maybe we could lower the level of orexin so people would be less hungry. So we haven't been able to find the magic pill yet. There's been lots of attempts to try to find different medications to treat obesity, and we probably could be pretty rich if you actually were able to do it. In the 1970s, they prescribed amphetamines actually to help people lose weight, and it worked really well, but it caused a whole lot of other problems because the amphetamines made people not hungry, gave them a lot of energy, but it also caused a lot of other problems as well. So this is a new medication they were advertising pretty heavily about a year ago. There was also a medication called Ally that I think you can still get, but there were some heart issues and some other issues as well with it, so it was a little scary. This medication is an interesting one. I'm not sure how successful it's been, but it's a combination of naltrexone, which naltrexone is an anti-opiate medication and an anti-alcohol medication that they give to help people to stop using drugs and alcohol. And they think that it acts on this reward system. And the hope is that it'll help work on that reward system as far as food goes. And then the other part of this medication is bupirin, which is actually Wellbutrin, which is an antidepressant medication that's sometimes used for addictive behaviors as well, like smoking and even alcohol and opiate addictions as well. So it's interesting. There are two medications that have been around for other uses, and they're combining them in the hopes that they will actually help with the weight loss. It hopefully will, but it's definitely a big problem in our society today. Definitely a problem that we would like to see fixed. So hope you enjoyed listening to this, and we'll talk in the next video about eating disorders.